Part 4. The arrival. The Velcrin Border Defense Network was the pride of their military. 50 stations, 200 warships, defensive satellites covering every approach. War Master Draxus commanded it personally from the fortress station Talon's Edge. He was confident. Humans were merchants and diplomats. They might send a few dozen ships. His forces would scatter them easily. Then the countdown reached 0. Space tore open like wounds in reality. One hyperspace window, then 10, then 100, then more, so many that they overlapped, creating cascading waves of light, and through them came ships. Human ships, warships. Draxus stared at his screens in disbelief. The numbers kept climbing. 100 ships, 500, 1,000, 1,500. They kept coming. Dreadnoughts the size of cities. Carriers launching fighters by the hundreds, destroyers, cruisers, support vessels. And behind them more were arriving. How many? He whispered. We count 3,000 ships, War Master, his sensor officer reported. And more are still arriving, 3,000. The Velcrin had 200, and the humans were still coming through hyperspace. The fleet was so large it stretched across the entire border region. Every screen showed human vessels in perfect formation, moving with mechanical precision. Admiral Sujin Han stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Incheon, a massive dreadnought that carried enough firepower to level a planet. Around her, the bridge crew worked in focused silence. They had trained for this. Every simulation, every drill. Now it was real. All ships report ready, Admiral, her communications officer said. Broadcast on all frequencies, she ordered. The message went out to every Velcrin station, every ship, every listening post. Her face appeared on their screens. This is Admiral Sujin Han of Earth's United Fleet. You attacked our colony. You murdered our civilians. You thought we were too soft to respond. You were wrong. She gestured and the feed switched to show the human fleet, the sheer size of it, the organization, the discipline. This is what human war looks like. You will withdraw all forces from former human territory. You will surrender War Master Draxus and all officers involved in the Haven 7 attack. You will do this now, or we will take them from you. Draxus cut the feed. His mind raced. 3,000 ships. It was impossible. Humans had been in space for less than a century. How could they build such a fleet? Where had these ships come from? But he was a warrior. He had his pride. All stations, engage defensive positions. All ships prepare for... The humans didn't wait for him to finish. They simply attacked. Captain Minho Kang commanded the dreadnought Incheon's Fury, positioned at the center of the human formation. Around him, hundreds of other captains waited for the signal. It came in the form of a single word from Admiral Han. Execute. The human fleet moved as one. Fighters launched from carriers, forming clouds of small craft that swarmed forward. Destroyers accelerated ahead, firing missiles by the thousands. The main battle line advanced steadily. Weapons charging, the Velcrin opened fire. Their defensive satellites lit up space with energy beams and projectiles. Some human ships were hit. A destroyer exploded. A cruiser took damage and fell back. But for every ship they hit, 100 more kept coming. Commander Hyejin Song led her fighter wing straight into the enemy point defense fire. Around her, pilots flew with precision born from thousands of training hours. They wove through the defensive fire, too fast and too numerous to track. Her wing destroyed 3 satellites in the first minute. This is for Haven 7, she shouted into her comm as she fired. Her squadron echoed the cry. The Velcrin fleet tried to respond, but they were overwhelmed. The humans fought differently than any enemy they had known. Every ship knew exactly where it was supposed to be. Every squadron had a specific target. There was no confusion, no hesitation, just methodical, devastating coordination. Draxus watched his defensive network fall apart in real time. Station after station went dark. Ships were destroyed or retreated. The humans pushed forward like a tide, unstoppable and relentless. He had studied human tactics, but this was nothing like what he expected. This wasn't merchant crews playing soldier. This was professional, organized military force operating at a level he had never seen. General Taejin Park commanded the Marine Assault Forces. When human ships breached the Velcrin defensive line, boarding craft launched. They targeted stations and disabled ships. The Marines moved through enemy vessels like they had trained on them for years. Room clearing, corridor fighting, every tactic executed perfectly. A Velcrin commander surrendered his station after the Marines took it in 30 minutes. How? He asked, wounded and defeated. How are you so good at this? The Marine sergeant, a woman named Minji, checked her weapon before responding. We're human. War is something we've been perfecting for 10,000 years. You thought we forgot how? She shook her head. We remember everything. By the 18-hour mark, the Velcrin border defense network was destroyed. Every station captured or destroyed. Most ships surrendered or fled. The casualties were devastating. For the Velcrin, human losses were surprisingly light. 57 ships lost, 3,000 crew members. Every name was recorded, every death was counted, and the fleet pushed deeper into Velcrin space. Draxus retreated to the next defensive line, his forces shattered. He sent desperate messages to the hierarch. They are not what we thought. They fight like machines but think like demons. We need reinforcements. The humans arrived at the second defensive line before the Velcrin could fully prepare. The attack was faster this time, more aggressive. The humans had learned from the first engagement and adapted. They were getting better at fighting Velcrin forces, learning, improving, becoming more efficient at killing. The Galactic Council watched in horror. They sent messages to Earth, begging for negotiations, demanding the humans stop their advance, threatening consequences. Every message was ignored. The human fleet continued forward, steady and implacable. Admiral Han stood on her bridge, watching the tactical displays. Her fleet had smashed through 2 defensive lines and was approaching the third. Her ships were performing beyond expectations. Her crews were focused and determined. This was what Earth's military was capable of when fully mobilized. When fighting for something that mattered. Message from the Velcrin hierarch. Her communications officer reported. He wants to negotiate. Tell him no, Admiral Han said without hesitation. We negotiate when we reach their homeworld. Not before. Minho stood in his command chair, watching as another Velcrin station surrendered without a fight. The enemy was breaking. Not just militarily, but psychologically. They had believed themselves superior. Believed humans were weak. Now that belief was shattered and they didn't know how to fight anymore. All ships maintain formation, he ordered. Continue advance. Next target is the Velcrin core systems. The fleet moved forward. Behind them, captured Velcrin stations and surrendered ships. Ahead, the heart of Velcrin territory. And above it all, the cold determination of a species that had been pushed too far. The Velcrin hierarch watched the humans approach his homeworld from his throne room. His military was defeated. His people were terrified. The impossible had happened. The weak species, the merchants, the diplomats who cried over their dead, had brought an armada that his entire civilization could not stop. He sent one final message to Admiral Han. Please. We surrender. No more death. We will give you what you want. The response came back within minutes. Admiral Han's face appeared on his screen. Her voice was cold. You will surrender War Master Draxus and every officer involved in the Haven 7 attack. You will accept occupation of your military command centers. You will submit to war crimes tribunals, and you will do all of this under the guns of Earth's fleet. The hierarch looked at the displays showing thousands of human ships surrounding his homeworld. He had no choice. He never really had. We agree to your terms. Admiral Han's expression didn't change. You wanted to see human warfare. Now you have. Remember this day. Remember that you could have had peace. You chose violence instead. This is the result. Part 1. The Mockery. The council chamber was massive, built to hold representatives from 40 different species. Captain Minho Kang stood at the human podium, his uniform crisp and clean. Next to him, Ambassador Ji-won Park waited with her hands folded. They had come to talk about military strategy, but the room felt hostile. The Velcrin hierarch, a tall reptilian creature with golden scales, leaned forward in his seat. His eyes were cold and amused. Around him, other council members whispered and clicked in their native languages. The humans had been part of this galactic community for 12 years, but they were still treated like children. Minho began his presentation. He talked about Earth's military history, about tactics and strategy. He mentioned guerrilla warfare, where small groups could defeat larger armies. He spoke of total war, where entire nations mobilized every resource. He explained deterrence theory, where the threat of massive retaliation kept peace. The Velcrin hierarch laughed. It was a harsh barking sound that echoed through the chamber. Other council members joined in. The Talrics, insectoid beings with multiple arms, chittered their amusement. Even the normally quiet Drell delegates made soft hooting sounds. Primitive mythology, the hierarch said, his translator making his words smooth and mocking. You speak of warriors fighting to the last soldier as if this is strategy. It is suicide. You speak of honor codes and rules of war as if violence can be civilized. How childish. A Talric's counselor raised one of her forearms. We have studied your historical records. These stories of 300 Spartans, of samurai codes, of soldiers holding impossible positions. They are clearly exaggerations. Propaganda for your populations. Ji-won Park stepped forward. Her voice was calm and steady. Those stories are not exaggerations. If anything, they understate what humans are capable of when threatened. More laughter filled the chamber. The hierarch waved a clawed hand dismissively. You mistake emotion for strength. Your species feels too much. You cry over fallen comrades. You build memorials for the dead. You write songs about battles lost. This makes you weak, not strong. Another counselor, a floating gas being from the Mist Collective, spoke through its translation device. We have witnessed your diplomatic efforts. You negotiate. You compromise. You seek peaceful solutions. These are not the actions of warriors. They are the actions of a soft species that fears conflict. Minho felt anger rising in his chest, but he kept his face neutral. Years of military discipline helped him stay calm. He had seen combat. He had held dying friends. He knew what humans could do when pushed too far. But these aliens thought they understood humanity from 12 years of peaceful interaction. Hyunwoo Lee, the intelligence analyst in their delegation, passed a datapad to G1. She glanced at it, then looked up at the council. We have shared our history in good faith. We have explained our military philosophy. You choose to see it as weakness. That is your mistake to make. The hierarch stood, his 7-foot frame towering over the podium. There are no mistakes here, Ambassador. We have fought wars for 10,000 years. We know what real military power looks like. Your species has impressive technology, yes. You have adequate ships and weapons, but you lack the will to use them properly. You are too concerned with morality, with rules, with the lives of individual soldiers. He gestured broadly at the council chamber. Every species here has learned the same lesson. War is about power. It is about dominating your enemy quickly and efficiently. Your human concepts of proportional response, of honoring enemies, of treating prisoners with dignity. These are luxuries of species that have never faced real threats. Ji-won's eyes narrowed. We have faced extinction-level threats multiple times in our history. We survived ice ages, plagues, and wars that killed millions. We learned from those experiences. And what did you learn? The hierarch asked mockingly. To build museums? To write poetry about suffering? To promise never again while preparing for exactly that? He laughed again. You are merchants playing at being warriors. When real conflict comes, you will negotiate. You will surrender. You will beg for peace. The council session ended shortly after. As the human delegation walked through the corridors of Apex Prime Station, Minho finally spoke. They have no idea what they're talking about. No, Ji-won agreed quietly. They've seen us at peace for 12 years. They think that's all we are. Hyunwoo was checking his datapad, frowning at something on the screen. There's something else. Deep space sensors are picking up unusual movement near our frontier colonies. Multiple ships, possibly military, at the edge of Velcrin space. Minho stopped walking. Are they heading toward human territory? Unknown. The readings are unclear. But the timing is suspicious. Right after that council session where they mocked our military capabilities. Ji-won pulled out her communication device. I'm sending a priority message to Earth Command. They need to know about this. As they reached their ship, Minho looked back at the massive space station. Somewhere inside, the Velcrin and other species were probably still laughing about the humans and their warrior myths. They were comfortable in their superiority, confident that they understood how the galaxy worked. But Minho had studied military history his entire life. He knew that every great power in history had eventually made the same mistake. They underestimated their opponents. They believed their own propaganda. They thought peace meant weakness. The Romans had thought that about the Germanic tribes. The British Empire had thought that about colonial rebels. Napoleon had thought that about Russian winter. And they had all learned the same hard lesson. Ji-won stood next to him. watching the station recede as their ship pulled away. "You're thinking about what comes next. I'm thinking about what they don't understand," Minho said. "They see our memorials and think we're sentimental. They see our rules of war and think we're weak. They see our diplomacy and think we're afraid to fight. And the truth? The truth is, we remember every lesson written in blood. We honor the dead because we understand the cost of war. We have rules because we know what happens without them. We seek peace because we know how terrible war really is." He paused. "But when war comes anyway, when all other options are exhausted, we know exactly how to fight. Our ancestors made sure we would never forget." The ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying them back toward Earth. Behind them, the Galactic Council continued its business, unaware that they had just made a catastrophic miscalculation. The humans had tried to warn them with history lessons and philosophical discussions. They had shared the stories of their warrior cultures, their tactical innovations, their capacity for organized violence. But the Council had laughed at myths and dismissed legends. Soon they would learn that human stories were not exaggerations. They were warnings. Part 3. The Silence Admiral Sujin Han stood in the command center beneath the Pacific Ocean. Around her, holographic displays showed the positions of every human ship in the galaxy. She had just watched the last recording from Haven 7, Dr. Yuna Kim's final broadcast, Commander Daehyun's last stand. 3,000 voices silenced. The room was full of Earth's military leadership, but nobody spoke. They all watched the casualty numbers, the timeline of the battle, the evidence of what had happened. When the display finally went dark, Admiral Han turned to face them. "Recommendations," she said simply. General Taejin Park spoke first. He was the commander of all ground forces, a man who had spent 40 years studying military history. "Total mobilization. Full wartime production. We show them what human war actually means." Others nodded. The political liaison, an elderly woman named Unji, cleared her throat. "The Galactic Council is calling for restraint. They want negotiations. They're promising investigations." "They watched our people die," Admiral Han said quietly. "They called it a border dispute. They did nothing." She looked around the room. "We are done explaining ourselves to aliens who think they understand us. We are done being patient. We are done being the newcomers who beg for respect." She touched a control on her desk. Every screen in the room lit up with ship designs, production schedules, and military plans. 3 weeks. That's how long we prepare. Then we show them what happens when you murder human civilians." The orders went out within the hour. Every human colony received the same message. Every ship, every station. Earth was going to war and it needed everything. Captain Minho Kang returned to Earth on the second day after Haven 7 fell. He went straight to Fleet Command, where Admiral Han was coordinating the mobilization. She looked up when he entered, her face tired but determined. "Captain, you tried to warn them." "Yes, Admiral." They laughed. "They won't be laughing soon." She gestured to the displays around them. "We're pulling every resource we have. Every shipyard is working triple shifts. Every factory is retooling for military production. We're converting civilian vessels into troop transports. We're activating reserve units. We're doing what humans do best, which is total war." She pulled up a star map. "The Velcrin think they won a quick victory. They're celebrating. Their military is relaxed. They expect us to complain to the Council, to negotiate. To be civilized." Minho studied the map. He saw human territory, then the vast expanse of Velcrin space. "What are we going to do?" "We're going to their borders, and we're going to teach them what human myths really mean." Ambassador Ji-won Park was recalled from the Galactic Council on day 3. She arrived at Earth Command expecting to help with diplomatic efforts. Instead, she found a war machine building itself at incredible speed. "They want me to return to the Council," she told Admiral Han. "They want to mediate. They're very concerned about escalation." "Tell them no." "Admiral, they're threatening sanctions. They're saying humanity will be isolated if we don't pursue peaceful resolution." Admiral Han looked at her coldly. "We pursued peace. We followed their rules. We joined their councils. We were patient and diplomatic and civilized, and they watched our people die. They did nothing." She stood up, walking to the window that looked out over the command center. "Tell them we're not interested in their mediation. Tell them we're not interested in their councils. Tell them to stay out of our way." Ji-won had been a diplomat for 20 years. She believed in talking and finding common ground and peaceful solutions, but she had also seen the recordings from Haven 7. She had heard Dr. Yuna Kim's last words. She nodded slowly. I'll tell them. The silence from Earth was absolute. No press conferences. No public statements. No threats or demands. Just the sound of industry working at maximum capacity. Every news outlet in human space showed the same thing. Factory workers building ships. Soldiers training. Resources moving. And everywhere. Memorials for Haven 7. 3,000 names read aloud on every station, every colony, every world. The Velcrin hierarch watched this from his throne world, confused. Where were the angry speeches? Where were the diplomatic protests? Where were the humans begging the council for justice? Instead, there was just this eerie quiet, broken only by the sound of hammers and furnaces. His intelligence officers brought reports. Human shipyards were producing vessels at rates that shouldn't be possible. Civilian industries had completely converted to military production. The entire species was moving in unified purpose toward a single goal. What is that goal? The hierarch asked. His officers didn't know. The humans weren't saying anything. On day 14, other species began sending concerned messages to Earth. The Talrics wanted to know what was happening. The Drell offered to help negotiate. Even the Mist Collective, usually indifferent to everything, asked questions. Every message received the same response. A simple statement from Admiral Sujin Han. Humanity thanks you for your concern. We are handling this matter internally. That was all. Nothing more. No explanations. No reassurances. Just cold professional acknowledgement. The Galactic Council met in emergency session. They debated what to do about the humans. Some species wanted to force Earth to stand down. Others wanted to help the Velcrin prepare for possible human aggression. A few, the older and wiser ones, suggested staying completely out of it. A Drell elder spoke into the chaotic debate. I have studied human history as many of us claim to. I studied it properly, not just their diplomatic transmissions. I know what happens when humans stop talking. I know what comes after their silence. What comes? Asked the hierarch. Everything, the elder said quietly. Everything they have. Everything they are. Everything they can possibly bring to bear. And we will not be able to stop it because they are not like us. They do not fight for territory or resources. They fight for their dead. They fight for principle. They fight with the full weight of their industrial civilization behind them. The hierarch dismissed this as more mythology. But some species started quietly moving their ships away from Velcrin space. Just in case. On day 21, Admiral Sujin Han held her only press conference. It was broadcast across the galaxy. She stood in her uniform, surrounded by the flags of every human nation. Her face was calm. Her voice was steady. 3 weeks ago, the Velcrin Dominion attacked Haven 7 without warning or provocation. 3,000 human civilians died. The Galactic Council did nothing. They called it a border dispute. They suggested negotiations. She paused. We are not interested in negotiations. She touched a control and a star map appeared behind her. Red markers showed human fleet positions. They were all moving in the same direction, toward the Velcrin border. In 72 hours, human military forces will arrive at the Velcrin border. We will not stop. We will not negotiate. We will not compromise. The Velcrin wanted to see what human war looks like. They mocked our myths and legends. They laughed at our stories of warriors. Her eyes were hard as steel. They will not laugh for much longer. To any species considering interference, do not. This is between humanity and the Velcrin. To the Galactic Council, you had your chance to provide justice. You chose not to. Now we will provide it ourselves. The broadcast ended. The countdown began. 72 hours until the human fleet arrived. In the command center, Min-Ho Kang stood next to General Taejun Park, watching the fleet markers move. Do you think they understand now? They're starting to, Taejun said. They're learning that human patience is not weakness. It's just us being polite. And when we stop being polite, then they see what we really are. Part 5. The Reckoning. The Velcrin homeworld had never seen foreign warships in its skies. For 10,000 years they had been the conquerors, the dominators, the superior species. Now 3,000 human vessels surrounded their planet. Weapons pointed at cities that held billions of people. But the humans did not fire. Admiral Sujin Han stood in the government center of the Velcrin capital, surrounded by her honor guard. The hierarch knelt before her, not because she demanded it, but because he had no pride left. His scales had lost their golden shine. His eyes showed only defeat. War Master Draxus has been taken into custody, General Tajan Park reported, along with 47 other officers involved in the Haven 7 attack. All Velcrin military command centers are now under human control. Ambassador G1 Park had returned, but not as a diplomat seeking peace. She came as a prosecutor seeking justice. She carried data files containing evidence of war crimes, video recordings, casualty lists, testimony from the few survivors who had escaped Haven 7. Everything documented with human precision. The trials were held in public, broadcast across the entire galaxy. Every species watched as humans presented their case. They showed what happened at Haven 7. They played Dr. Yuna Kim's final transmission. They read the names of every person who died. All 3,000 of them. It took hours just to read the names. War Master Draxus sat in the defendant's chair wearing restraints. He had commanded the attack. He had ordered his troops to show no mercy. He had celebrated the victory. Now he faced human justice, and it was nothing like what he expected. Captain Minho Kang testified about the diplomatic meeting where the Velcrin had mocked human military capabilities. They laughed at our history. They called our warriors myths. They said we were too soft for real war. The prosecutor, a human lawyer named Donghyun, addressed the court. The defendant believed humans were weak. He believed we would surrender or negotiate. He was wrong, but his mistake does not excuse his crimes. 3,000 civilians died. Many were tortured. None were given mercy. Draxus tried to defend himself. This is war. Casualties happen. We did what any military force would do. Donghyun pulled up human military laws, centuries old. These are our rules of warfare. Protection of civilians, treatment of prisoners, proportional response. These rules exist because we understand what happens without them. You ignored all of this. You committed murder, War Master. Organized, deliberate murder. The evidence was overwhelming. The testimony was clear. The verdict came after 3 days of careful deliberation. Draxus and 32 other officers were found guilty of war crimes. The sentences were harsh but lawful. Life imprisonment for most. Execution for Draxus and 4 others who had personally ordered civilian massacres. The galaxy watched in fascination. The humans had crushed the Velcrin military in 6 weeks. They could have bombed cities. They could have killed billions in revenge. Instead, they held trials. They followed their own laws. They distinguished between soldiers following orders and commanders who gave criminal orders. The Galactic Council met for the first time since the war ended. The chamber was different now. The human delegation didn't sit in the junior seats anymore. They sat at the head table, and every species gave them careful attention. The Velcrin hierarch was gone, removed from power. His replacement was a younger female named Sivara, who had opposed the Haven 7 attack. She stood before the council and spoke with difficulty. The Velcrin Dominion offers formal apology to humanity. We underestimated you. We attacked without cause. We learned a terrible lesson. Jiwan Park rose to respond. She looked different now, harder. She had spent 6 weeks watching war unfold. She had seen what her species could do when truly threatened. The Velcrin attacked us because they thought we were weak, because they believed our culture of diplomacy meant we could not fight. They were wrong. She gestured to the screens showing human ships still surrounding Velcrin worlds. But we take no pleasure in this victory. We wanted peace. We tried to explain ourselves with words. When words failed, we used force. Now the galaxy knows what we are capable of, and we hope this knowledge prevents future conflicts. A Talrix counselor, one of those who had mocked humanity in that first meeting, spoke carefully. What are human intentions now? Your fleet is the largest military force the galaxy has ever seen. You have proven your power. What will you do with it? Admiral Sujin Han, present as a military advisor, stood. We will go home. We will return to our borders. We will resume trade and diplomatic relations. But we will never again apologize for our strength. We will never again accept being treated as inferior. And we will never again allow attacks on our civilians to go unanswered. The council members shifted nervously. The balance of power had changed completely. Humanity was no longer the junior species begging for recognition. They were a major military power that had proven they could organize, mobilize, and fight at levels that shocked the galaxy. But the humans didn't use this power to dominate. They didn't demand tribute. They didn't seize territory. They simply established terms for peace with the Velcrin and prepared to leave. General Tajan Park oversaw the withdrawal of human forces. Occupation forces stayed at key Velcrin military bases, but they were small and professional. They provided security while the Velcrin rebuilt their government. They helped maintain order. They even assisted with reconstruction efforts. A Velcrin civilian approached a human marine named Borum, who was helping clear rubble from a damaged building. "Why are you helping us?" "We attacked you." "We killed your people." Borum paused, wiping sweat from her face. "Because our fight was with your military, not your civilians. We don't punish innocent people for the crimes of their leaders. That's not who we are. But we are enemies. We were enemies. Now you're just people who made a mistake and need help." She went back to moving rubble. "Besides, this is what humans do. We fight hard when we have to. But when the fighting stops, we help rebuild. It's in our nature." On Earth, memorials were built for the Haven 7 colonists. Every name was carved in stone. Every face was preserved in photographs. Families mourned. Friends grieved. But they also felt pride. Their loved ones had stood against impossible odds. They had shown the galaxy what human courage meant. Captain Minho Kang visited the memorial 3 months after the war ended. He stood in front of Commander Dae-hyun Choi's name, remembering the reports of his last stand. "You bought us time," he said quietly. 6 days of resistance. 6 days that showed the galaxy we don't surrender. Thank you." The diplomatic situation settled into new patterns. Humans were offered positions of authority in the Galactic Council. Trade agreements were renegotiated with Earth holding better terms. Other species approached with respect now, not condescension. But the biggest change was in how aliens viewed humans. The myths and legends were no longer dismissed as exaggerations. The stories of human warriors were studied seriously. Military academies across the galaxy added human tactical doctrine to their curriculum. Ambassador Jiwon Park attended a council session 6 months after the war. A new species was joining, seeking membership. They were peaceful traders much like humans had been. The Talric's counselor began explaining how things worked, speaking down to them slightly. Jiwon cleared her throat. The Talric stopped talking. "Perhaps we should let them speak for themselves," Jiwon suggested gently. "Rather than assuming we know what they are capable of. We learned that lesson recently. It was expensive." The Talric's counselor nodded quickly and sat down. The new species presented themselves without interruption. Admiral Sujin Han retired from active service 1 year after the war. She spent her retirement teaching at the military academy, training the next generation of officers. Her first lecture always covered the same topic. "We did not want war with the Velcrin," she told her students. "We tried diplomacy. We tried patience. We tried explaining ourselves. When those failed and they attacked our civilians, we responded with overwhelming force. But notice what we did and did not do." She pulled up tactical displays from the war. "We destroyed military targets. We avoided civilian casualties where possible. We held trials for war criminals. We helped rebuild after victory. This is the human way of war. Fierce when necessary, honorable always, merciful when possible." A young cadet raised her hand. "Admiral, why did we show mercy? They killed 3,000 of our people." "Because we are not like them," Sujin replied. "They thought strength meant cruelty. They thought power meant domination. We showed them differently. We showed them that the truly strong can afford to be merciful, that the truly powerful can afford to be just." The war became part of human culture. Songs were written, books were published, families passed down stories. But always at the center was the memory of Haven 7, of 3,000 people who refused to surrender, who fought with mining tools and courage against professional soldiers, who held for 6 days and showed the galaxy what humanity meant. 10 years after the war, Ji-hoon Nam, the freighter pilot who had organized the civilian resistance, stood on Haven 7. The colony had been rebuilt. New people lived there now. But the memorial remained. 3,000 names carved in stone that would never erode. Part 2. The incursion commander Dae-hyun Choi was drinking coffee when the alarm started screaming. He dropped the cup and ran to the command center of Haven 7, the mining colony he protected. The screen showed what he feared most. Ships were coming out of hyperspace at the system's edge. Lots of ships. And they were Velcrin warships. Haven 7 was a small colony on the edge of human space. 3,000 people lived there, mining rare metals from the asteroids. Most were civilians. Dahyun had only 60 soldiers in his defense force. They had small arms, some mining equipment, and 2 old patrol ships. That was all. Dr. Yuna Kim burst into the command center. She was the colony's xenobiologist, studying alien ecosystems. What's happening? Those aren't scheduled supply ships. No, they're not. Dahyun was already calculating odds. 20 Velcrin warships against his tiny force. Get to the communication center. Start sending distress signals. Let Earth know what's coming. The Velcrin fleet moved fast. Within an hour, they were in orbit around Haven 7. A message came through, translated into human language. The voice was arrogant and cold. Human colony Haven 7. You will surrender immediately. Lower your shields. Prepare for occupation. You have 10 minutes to comply. Dahyun looked at his soldiers. They were young, scared, but ready. He thought about the 3,000 civilians depending on him. Then he thought about what the Council had said. That humans would negotiate. That humans would surrender. That humans were too soft for real war. He opened the communication channel. This is Commander Dahyun Choi of Haven 7. We decline your offer. If you want this colony, come and take it. Silence on the other end. Then harsh laughter. You have 60 soldiers and mining equipment. We have 20 warships and 10,000 troops. This is foolish? Maybe, Dahyun said. But we're human. Foolish courage is kind of our thing. The attack began minutes later. Velcrin fighters screamed down from orbit, firing on the colony's shields. The shields held for now, but they wouldn't last long. Dahyun ordered his people into position. They had prepared for this possibility, though he never thought it would actually happen. The miners knew their equipment better than anyone. They turned massive drilling machines into makeshift weapons. Industrial lasers meant for cutting rock became defensive turrets. Cargo containers became bunkers. The entire colony transformed into a fortress. When the Velcrin troops landed, they expected quick surrender. Instead, they found humans fighting from every corner. A mining laser cut through their dropship's hull. Explosives meant for breaking asteroids destroyed their armor. Miners who had never fired weapons in anger before fought like trained soldiers. Jihoon Nam, a freighter pilot, was in orbit when the attack started. He watched the Velcrin fleet surround Haven 7 and felt rage burn through him. He had delivered supplies to this colony for 3 years. He knew those people. He contacted every other freighter and transport in the system. 18 ships in total, all civilian, all unarmed. Listen up, he broadcast on the emergency channel. We're outgunned. We're outmatched, but those are our people down there. I'm going after their supply lines. Anyone who wants to join me, form up on my position. 17 ships followed him. They used the asteroids as cover, hitting Velcrin supply transports and pulling back before the warships could respond. It wasn't much, but it was something. It showed the Velcrin that humans would fight with whatever they had. On the ground, the battle became brutal. The Velcrin were professional soldiers with superior weapons and armor. But they had never fought an enemy like humans before. Every building had to be cleared room by room. Every corridor was a potential ambush. The humans refused to surrender even when surrounded. They fought with mining tools, with their bare hands, with whatever they could find. Dr. Yuna Kim wasn't a soldier, but she kept the communications running. She broadcast everything happening on Haven 7. She documented the Velcrin attacks on civilian areas. She made sure the galaxy would know what was happening, even if nobody came to help. On the 3rd day, Commander Dahyun stood in the ruins of the Eastern District. Half his soldiers were dead. The civilians had taken up weapons. A young miner named Hana, barely 20 years old, was treating wounded fighters with medical supplies she didn't know how to use properly. An old engineer named Wu Jin had figured out how to reprogram mining drones into kamikaze weapons. The Velcrin commander contacted him again. You have lost. Your position is hopeless. Surrender now and we will treat you well. Dahyun looked at the people around him, covered in dust and blood, exhausted, hungry, still fighting. You still don't understand, do you? We're not fighting because we think we can win. We're fighting because we're human. Because this is our home. Because you thought we were too soft to resist? Then you will die for nothing. No, Dahyun said quietly. We'll die for something. And Earth will know what you did. They'll remember. The battle continued for 6 days total. The Velcrin threw everything at Haven 7, orbital bombardment, chemical weapons, wave after wave of soldiers. The human defenders were pushed back, building by building, street by street. But they never stopped fighting. Dr. Unikim's last broadcast went out on the 6th day. "This is Haven 7, we are being overrun. Commander Choi is dead. Most of our people are dead. But we held for 6 days against an enemy that said we would surrender in 6 minutes. Tell Earth what happened here. Tell them to remember Haven 7. Tell them to remember us." The transmission ended. The colony fell. 3,000 humans dead. 60 soldiers who had become 300 fighters when civilians took up arms. All gone. Ji-hoon Nam watched from orbit, tears streaming down his face. His freighter fleet had lost 12 ships, but they had seen it. They had witnessed the impossible defense, and they escaped to tell the story. The Velcrin celebrated their victory. It had cost them 4 ships and hundreds of soldiers, much more than expected, but they had won. They reported to their hierarch that humans fought harder than anticipated, but ultimately surrendered to superior force. The report was not entirely accurate. The humans had not surrendered. They had been killed, fighting to the last person. News reached the Galactic Council within hours. There were statements of concern, calls for investigation, requests for dialogue, but no action. No consequences for the Velcrin. It was declared a border dispute. These things happened sometimes in the frontier regions. Earth received the news in silence. No public statements, no angry speeches, no threats. The human ambassadors were recalled from all alien worlds. Human ships began withdrawing from galactic trade routes. And then nothing, just silence. In the ruins of Haven 7, the Velcrin soldiers walked through streets still smoking from battle. They found memorials everywhere. Humans had stopped fighting long enough to write names of their dead, to create small shrines for fallen friends. Even in the middle of being slaughtered, they had taken time to honor each other. One Velcrin officer stood in what had been the colony's central square. A mining laser was still warm, surrounded by 15 dead humans who had operated it until the end. On the wall behind it, someone had written in human script, "We held the line." The officer felt something strange. A cold feeling he didn't recognize. Years later, he would understand it had been the first touch of fear. The realization that they had not fought weak merchants. They had fought something far more dangerous. Something that didn't surrender. Something that remembered its dead and honored them even while dying. Something that was now very, very quiet. And silence, he would learn, was the most terrifying sound of all.